Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. Really thrilled. I'm curious about what kind of footprint I've left. My children will tell you on their backsides. There's quite a few. So this is a great, great morning. I'm so excited that we've got people from all across the country here, and I'm here to do a little bit of a walk through what Imagine a School could be like, because we're at an absolutely phenomenal time in Ontario's education. I am a person who believes very, very strongly that what we need to be thinking about more and more in education is the power of relationships. We in Ontario, as many of you know very well, are taking on a bold new journey. We have worked very, very hard, as you know. Well, I should first of all say, I'm going to say we, that is, we as the royal we. I'm only been connected for a short period of time, other than being the mum of 5 great kids. I've been very involved. So when I talk about we, I'm talking about the will and the thinking of the people of education in Ontario. So we're looking very seriously at not only achievement and equity, making sure that all kids have the opportunity to reach their full potential, but we're also talking about well-being. And I'm, as you heard from David, I'm an advisor to the Minister and Premier of Ontario. I'm very honoured to play that role. And I'm continually asking, are we thinking about building the relationship skills that children need? Are we working with educators so that they know how to build relationships with each other? We have a wonderful group. Andy Hargraves has just written a journal proposal, an article that talks about collaborative professionalism, that I'll read to you his definition. And what in that definition, I want you to imagine a school. I want you to imagine a school and say, I want that in my school. When we think of teachers, educators, deeply thinking about not just what do kids learn, but how do kids learn. Asking not just about how do I get them to think about this, but really thinking deeply about how do people learn how to think. Not what to think, but how to think. So connection is absolutely key in all of this. There's a parallel process, as they talk about in the big fancy world, where what we're thinking about in terms of the teacher-student relationship, that those kids will feel that the teachers deeply, deeply care, not only about their achievement, but deeply about their well-being. And what does that well-being mean? How they feel about themselves, their sense of identity. But you know, one of the things that I always want to propose to people when I'm talking is, do we have guiding principles around what education and parenting is all about? And I heard a Mohawk elder, Tom Porter, a number of years ago, and he blew me away, because he talked about the teachings of his grandmother. And his grandmother taught that children are the sacred ones. They are the heart of the nation. It's our sacred responsibility to be raising our children. Now, can you imagine that as a guiding light for Ontario education, that children are our sacred ones? Well, you know, I think if we really thought about what the word child means in Indigenous language, according to Tom, is he or she who has the light within. Can you imagine a world in our education system where we think our role as educators and parents is to let that light shine? How can we let that light shine? Well, we know that you can't let that light shine if you're too frickin' busy stuffing the duck. Now, what do I mean by stuffing the duck? I mean that curriculum that will tell you thou shalt do all of these things, and you completely miss the child in it. Why is it that we have a world where kids are learning, enjoying and playing? Well, they're not playing anymore. Well, that's another time. But they're enjoying all the stuff they do outside of school. That's where the learning is happening. They're excited about, and then they come to school, and what do we say? We don't say, well, what is it that you're bringing? What is it that you're excited about? We say, we're the adults, we know, stuff the duck. Now, in case you don't know about stuffing the duck, it's something that French people and other cultures do to get a big fat liver. We just drink to do it, but others get it. But if we think about the wisdom of the elders as a guiding principle, and so when we think about Ontario's bold new vision of looking not only at achieving excellence and ensuring equity, but promoting well-being, and of course enhancing public confidence, of course. But one of the first meetings that I had with the Premier, I remember it very, very clearly. I'm probably not supposed to talk about it, but it was with Liz Sandals, and she's not there anymore. So anyway, I said, one of my big concerns in the work that we're going to do as advisors is that there are these competing tensions. There's the competing tensions of achievement. And everybody is all about frickin' math these days. Holy cow, Batman. But if we're all about math, how can we also be all about well-being? Is there going to be a tension between creating the conditions where kids thrive and flourish and a tension between we have to get the math scores up? So I'm really absolutely thrilled to say that the team at the Ministry of Education has done a phenomenal job of listening to the work that People for Education has been doing for a number of years in the Measuring What Matters, but also in saying to thousands of people, tell us what you think well-being is. Tell us how we can interconnect achievement with well-being rather than thinking of them separately. And so the definition that was put out in the discussion paper that many of you, I know, if you're here, you probably took part in that discussion, is that well-being is that positive sense of self, spirit and belonging that we feel when our cognitive, emotional, social and physical needs are being met. As our Indigenous partners have long known, healthy development of the mind, body and spirit is contingent on balance and interconnectedness. So our First Nations people, again, we are so privileged to have the conversations that we are able to have. And our Indigenous people have given and shared with us a mental wellness continuum. And I want you to think about this, because it's very profound. There's lots in it. Mental well-being is about having a sense of purpose, a sense of hope, a sense of belonging and meaning in our daily lives. You're going to hear from a phenomenal panel with Nancy Steinauer and her Pushing the Limits book. And in that, I want you to listen to how in so many of the stories, there's an embodiment of a sense of purpose, hope, belonging and meaning in daily life. But here's a challenge. If I'm a teacher and I think that my job is to communicate and help kids learn a particular set of skills or a particular curriculum, cover the content, and then somebody else is coming along, some shrink from McMaster, is coming along and saying, how you are with the kids, who you are with the kids, is really what helps them grow and flourish. When I talk to kindergarten teachers, I ask them, what do you see your role as? Do you see your role as a human developer, as my friend Bruce Ferguson talks? Or do you see your role as somebody preparing kids for grade 1? Now, I can tell you, across the province, there's a great variability. Isn't that part of the kicker? The variability is huge. But if we can keep coming back to teachers having a sense of meaning, having a sense of purpose. I spoke with a group of teachers in Dundas not too long ago, and they said that working with Michael Fullan thinking about actually bringing the competencies into what you do in your classroom. I'll talk about the competencies in a minute. Changed completely their sense of meaning as teachers. They were getting tired of the drudgery of covering curriculum that was boring kids out of their frickin' minds. That's what kids will tell us. What kids have told us is they want relationship. They want connection. They want teachers who care about their learning, not just about the teacher's teaching. So imagine this world, and this is thanks to my friend Dr. Kathy Short from School Mental Health Assist. Imagine this and say, I want this in my school. Imagine that every child and youth in Ontario would receive a warm greeting from staff and fellow students as they arrived at school each day. Imagine. I have a dream, as many of you know, that every single child will have at least one adult whose eyes light up when they enter the room. Imagine that we created the school where that happened every single day for every child. The students would begin the day ready to learn after a check-in from teachers who take the emotional temperature in the classroom prior to starting lessons. I think that we are seeing more and more children, as a child psychiatrist I think this, who are being exposed to trauma, and that we are inadvertently pushing their trauma triggers. But if we started with classrooms that said, I am aware of the invisible relationships in this classroom, the power of my connection to my students is a motivator for learning. Rather than thinking, oh, I don't have time, I've got so much I have to cover. We have to give teachers permission to be able to say, this invisible classroom is also an important one to take from. The students learn and practice social emotional development skills each day at school as part of the regular curriculum. Can you imagine what it would have been like if Donald Trump had learned social and emotional skills at school? Imagine a world. Imagine. But what we know is that the OECD and PISA are now saying we're not measuring the right things anymore, guys. We know that places like South Korea and other countries are doing really well in PISA, but their suicide rates are through the roof. And so PISA, OECD is now looking at social and emotional development and learning as pivotal for successful students who flourish and thrive. The students went out of their way to watch for and help other students through formal peer mentoring and individual acts of kindness. Now make sure we're not rewarding the acts of kindness, because we know that when you reward, you change the dynamic. You acknowledge acts of kindness, but you don't give the kindness student of the week. Why? Because when you do that, everybody starts looking around to see, is anybody noticing how kind I am? So we have to be wary about our rewards. Individual acts of kindness, because we are wired to connect. We are a social species, and we have to ask in our classrooms, are we interfering with that social drive and desire to connect? What are we doing to let flourish the kindness, the empathy that children very naturally have? When I'm talking about the early years, I've got a little presentation and a little slide that I show of a little 18-month-old who, there's a stranger in the room, and he comes across, he wants to put something in the cupboard, and he keeps banging into the cupboard. Nobody says anything to this little toddler, and the guy's banging into the cupboard, and the little guy just comes out, opens the door, and looks up at him and says, have you got it now? Empathy develops. Empathy develops very early. Imagine that parents and families would be engaged in student learning and school life, and that the school would be a hub for community activity. I would love it if we had this in all of our schools. Imagine similar things for educators, and then we can imagine if we could collaboratively achieve this vision, what an amazing place Ontario would be for children. and youth to grow and learn with a strong sense. Here we have again belonging, meaning, purpose and hope. Can we have them as pillars of education? Well, you know, we know that in September there were some announcements made as well. And many of you who have heard me speak before know that I've been talking about the development of the whole child for a very, very long time. That we have focused way too long on what I've termed the tyranny of cognitive seduction. Isn't that great? I made that up. I made it up. So the tyranny of cognitive seduction is that we think the academic skills of literacy, numeracy and science are really what matter for kids. Well, the science tells us for sure they're important. But what helps children flourish and thrive is their love of learning. And their social and emotional, what they call the soft skills, are the skills that help kids soar. So we're now in a time in Ontario where we are saying, where the ministry is saying and supporting people in thinking about the development of the whole child. So that means in terms of the physical domain, not just paying lip service to having X number of minutes outside. I've got an agenda, I have to tell you, that I bring up whenever I can. We know that children who are literate in terms of their physical well-being, their sleep, their appetite, their eating, their exercise, we know that those kids take care of themselves better. They're healthier. We also know that if you've got good strenuous exercise, it releases stuff in your brain, miracle grow for the brain, BDNF. And so one of the things I say is we have to stop taking away frickin' recess. We need our kids to get out there, burn up, build up those BDNF transmitters and get back in the classroom ready to learn. We need to get out of a system where we punish children. We need to start thinking about children's behaviour as stress behaviour, not misbehaviour, as my friend Stuart Shanker talks about so elegantly in his self-reg work. So we need to be thinking much more intentionally about the physical development of children. The development of abilities in cognition, absolutely. Critical thinking, problem solving, creativity. But you know, I worry, as many of you do, that the way we go about educating children doesn't help them develop these crucial skills. Now, we've got crucial skills called transferable skills now that will be in the new report card that I'll talk about. But one of the things that I worry about is that we're going to add on to the teachers' load and burden that they have to get on to doing these transferable skills, rather than seeing that critical thinking, creativity, they are the door that opens the mind to deep learning. We need to see them not as separate curriculum and competencies, but that the competencies become the curriculum. That's what we'll see over time, I so hope. Socially, we have not paid attention. You know, we help kids, if they can't read, we help them learn to read. If they can't do math, we help them learn math. If they've got some physical disability, we help them function to the best they can. If they've got a behaviour problem, we frickin' punish them. What's with that? If they have a behaviour problem, it means that they've got lagging skills. Kids will do well if they can, not if they want to. I've been a psychiatrist for 30 years. I have not met a kid who said, I want to wake up this morning and be absolutely miserable.